Hello everybody and welcome to the ESL UK Premiership. My name is Munchables and joining me once again is Vedius, who is now pretty much a certified globe trotter. How are you doing, man?
I'm great, thank you, Munchables. How are you?
I am doing absolutely fantastic. Great to be back after an extended break due to the World Tournament. I'll try not to mention too many results from the World Tournament. I'm well aware that some people may not have watched the games just yet. But, I mean, up until the final, I would say it's been one of the best World Tournaments ever. It was such a good group stage. Maybe a little bit anticlimactic towards the end. But other than that, it's been absolutely fantastic. But now, we are back with the ESL UK Premiership, back to see who's going to be able to make it into our playoffs and into our finals. Now, our matchups for today are going to be Choke Gaming up against the National University Esports League, followed by FM Esports versus Excel Esports. Now, this is pretty much the last week of our top four versus our bottom four that we've had in the standings so far. If you've not been keeping up with the Premiership up to this point, the scores on the doors are relatively one-sided at this point. We have 4 teams with 3 wins under their belt and 4 teams with 3 losses under their belts. This is going to be the last week where we have one of those top 4 teams up against one of those bottom 4 teams, and then from next week we're going to see the scoreboard really start to diversify a little bit, but hopefully we get to see the scoreboard diversify this week, as we've seen quite a few roster changes in some of these lineups. Now, talk to me about these two matchups, Vedius. What do you think is going to happen today?
Well, Choke and the NUEL both running brand new lineups. The NUEL, because they lost a couple of their players before the break, this break has given them an opportunity to collect themselves and build together a new team. Coming into this matchup, they're really looking to see how they hold their own. You know, there are a lot of new players. These guys have pretty much, they believe, some of the most talented players in the entire NUEL. I mean, they've got some impressive KDAs across a lot of them, and I mean, you can see that they're all talented individuals. We've got a couple master players, some Diamond 1. Like, these guys are good individual players. It's just going to be a matter of how well they can compete together as a team, especially against one of the top 4 that is Choke. Now, these guys are running a few familiar faces themselves. They brought back the Numlocked. He's back from the Turkish LCS. He's come back to enjoy the UK esports and its prosperous nature. As well as that, they've got Jokerism, formerly the AD carry of XL Esports, now looking to finally prove himself that he can play along with these top 4 teams. On top of that, they've also got Raveno coming into the mid lane. This guy, he's also from the Turkish LCS, a good friend of Numlocked, and with this new lineup of theirs, they're hoping to correct some of the issues that they were having before the break in September. So both these teams running brand new lineups. Can't really say you know, how either one of them will perform, but I'm expecting Choke to be the favorites coming into this matchup.
Yeah, I would definitely agree with that one. I feel like this is kind of the opportunity that the lower 4 teams, such as the NUEL, such as XL, have an opportunity to sort of clean the slate, because before the break, we had a couple of teams that were just looking absolutely dominant, infused right up there at the top of the list, followed by probably FM. They were looking pretty much undefeatable. But now, with this sort of break, we've seen quite a few roster change-ups. We've seen a lot of opportunity for these teams to sort of get a grips with the situation, maybe have a couple of roster swaps themselves and try to put some points on the board. And as we head into our first champion select of the day between Choke Gaming and the NUEL, our first ban is going to be a Nivea, potentially an XPK inspired ban.
Well, actually, it's largely due to the fact that this mid laner, this Ray and Mort, that's the guy. It took me a while to figure out his name, but he's actually quite a familiar Anivia player. It is one of his go-to champions. He largely played it up to reach his Diamond 1 status. He's rocking a 3.66 KDA on the champion. He's got a 62% win ratio, and he's got over 400 games on the champion. So definitely a target ban towards Ray and Mort. He's definitely familiar. And if you guys actually watched before the break the XL versus Exertus, you could see Ped running wild on that Anivia. So people who understand the champion can really cause a lot of problems for the other team. So I think it's a pretty smart ban to take that away off Ray and Mort.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's one of the things that we see a lot more in the UK Premiership than you potentially see in the LCS is target bans. Less of the meta bans, more of those individual player bans. I mean, there are definitely merits to just going for those meta bans, but if you can ban something that somebody plays so much more often than the other champions, they are bound to do better on that, regardless of the champion's actual power. Like, for example, there are players over in Korea that are top 10 challenger that, well, there's a player that literally only plays Kha'Zix. Kha'Zix has been renowned as basically a no-go champion for about half a year now, but he still maintains top 10 challenger with that one. And it's a perfect example of why it's important to sometimes go for these target bans. And we see a Twisted Fate ban as well as a Soraka ban as well, which definitely feel like these ones are target bans as well.
Yeah, there are quite a lot of target bans in this game, which means so much is left open. And that was immediately what I was going to jump to. Tom Kench. This guy has been so popular at Worlds ever since it was brought out. You know, it's been unstoppable. You know, we've seen, I do believe it was the Ku Tigers were one of the first teams to bring it out,
yeah.
And Gorilla's performance on the champion was so unbelievable that it just pretty much became a standard ban in every single game. Hado has been playing it recently. You know, it's not quite one of his most played champions, but it's definitely something that he is pretty comfortable on, and it just has so much versatility to it. You know, it's great at peeling, keeping your AD carry alive. It provides a lot of utility with the stuns and the slows that he can throw out, as well as that he basically has an ultimate that acts as a Twisted Fate ultimate. He's just,
yeah.
He covers so many bases.
Except it's a two-man Twisted Fate ultimate.
Exactly. He's such a great support champion, and the fact that it's been left open is a little bit surprising, but, you know, what the NUEL are going to respond with is actually a lock-in for Kalista and this Gragas. Now, we haven't actually seen a lot of Gragas recently, simply due to it not being available in Worlds, but that ban hasn't been applied to this game, so we are going to see it come out this time. And Shaven Tortoise, I think it's one of his comfort champions. I think it is something that he does like to play.
It was, but Gragas and Rek'Sai were kind of the two champions that he was playing regularly when we've seen it. And I mean, it's weird that Shaven Tortoise is our sort of veteran member of the NUEL, because he's only played 1 or 2 weeks with them before, and suddenly he's their longest standing member. But I love as well that the NUEL are running with the Clarity and Clairvoyance, holding on to those summoners before they're removed from the game in Season 6.
Oh, they've removed from the game, wow.
They're getting removed from the game. Disco Nunu will be no more, friends. I'm so sorry.
Mana potions, RIP mana potions.
But anyway...
Yes, right now, potentially a Kindred Hover. I really want this to be locked in, because Kindred is... Yes, we're going to see a Kindred, right.
Okay.
This champion is crazy good. I've seen this a lot in the past around the challenges scene. A lot of these high-quality players have been rocking this champion, and she scales so incredibly well. You know, when we get into game, I'll talk a little bit more about her, but what she offers, like, right now, it's going to be almost impossible to kill Jokerism. With the ultimate coming out from Plex on this champion, as well as constantly being devoured, and the huge amount of mobility that Tristana's running, like, it's going to be so hard to kill that AD carry.
It truly is, and I mean, 2 AD carries now on the side of Choke. I'm interested to see what mid laner they pick up with this composition, because damage really isn't going to be too much of an issue for them. They, however, banned out Lulu, so wouldn't be too... I was about to say wouldn't be too surprised to see Choke pick up the Orianna, but currently potentially going to be locked in by Ray and Mort, which potentially could be bad news for Choke. What do you reckon they could go for a mid laner here?
Well, they could stick to something pretty standard like a Victor or an Azir. You know, they have fallen out a little bit from the current meta, but they're still very strong picks. Ravano does play that Azir. He is familiar with the champion, but as well as that, Ahri could be a very good pick here as well. It's just a matter of what style of composition. If they really want to tunnel on keeping Jokerism alive, then they could look to provide a lot more utility. But it does look like that they just basically want to be able to have kill pressure in every single lane. And if Numlock does lock in this Aurelia, then I wouldn't be surprised to see something like an Ahri come out from Ravano. But, you know, looking a little bit more at Ravano, he's actually filling in the shoes of Alchemist. Like, Alchemist has been a well-known mid laner in the UK. He's
Yeah.
been playing for an incredibly long time, but he felt like he kind of got a bit burnt out. He felt like he'd been playing the game for a bit too long. And now they brought in Ravano, and, to fill in Alchemist's shoes is a big ask for this guy, Alchemist was arguably the best mid laner in the whole UK.
Yeah.
So the fact that Ravano's come in from the Turkish LCS to try and prove that he can fill those shoes might put a bit of extra pressure on this guy.
Yeah, it certainly could. And take a look at the composition that Choke have built themselves right now. They are, I mean, I feel like it's almost part picks and part just straight up team fight with the Hado locking in that Maokai. I'd love to see some synergy between the Hado and Numlocked here, using the Tahm Kench ultimate in combination with the Malphite ultimate, getting Malph into the perfect position to then get that multi-man knock-up.
Yeah, it's a bit of a strange one to go for the Malphite. They may very well go for a lane swap running like this, but it surprised me because I think that they're quite comfortable in their ability to lane against their opponents. I think that mainly what they're doing is they recognize that when you're running a Tahm Kench, you don't actually have that much engage potential. The same goes for running, this... I've completely forgotten her name. Kindred, sorry. Kindred in the jungle. They've got no reliable engage. Sure, they've got a couple picks. They've got a couple opportunities to try and catch the NUEL out of position, but they've got nothing to really kick off a team fight. So this Malphite pick to me says, right, we need something to start things off. We want to be able to go for these mid to late game team fights, and we need somebody to kick this action off for us. So we're going to run the Malphite, and I think that it is a pretty good pick because there's so much follow-up available on the rest of Choke. So I do quite like their composition. I think it's quite well rounded. They have a decent. I think their early game's a little bit weak, but it's not going to be weak for that long. In the mid to late games, though, that is when their comp really excels. And keep an eye on that Kindred, because once she gets a few early stacks, she really starts to hit hard.
She really does, and that's one thing that I've been speaking to a lot of players about Kindred, and one thing a lot of people have been saying is it's really hard to gauge how much damage you're going to be able to do. Unlike other champions, for example, if you play a lot of Tristana, you're going to know at level 5 with this item you're going to do X amount of damage. With Kindred, it's not as simple, because when you pick up those stacks, if you've not played Kindred before, Kindred will randomly mark jungle creatures and the Scuttle Crab. And when you destroy it, you get a mark which will stack AD for you. However, it's percentage AD. So it's completely reliant on what other AD you have as well. And you're going to have different stacks at different points in the game, every game. So when I've spoken to other players, quite a few people have been complaining to me that it's kind of hard to sort of get a mastery of this champion as quickly as other champions, purely because of that.
Yeah, it's very difficult to... well, for a start, you're playing an AD carry in the jungle, which is already a little bit of a strange thing to do. It's not conventional in terms of the meta, but it's also the fact that you want to try and get as many stacks as possible. And once you get 6, they stop appearing in the enemy jungle. So whether you get those 6 through killing enemy players or you steal a bunch of the enemy jungle, the moment you hit 6 stacks, that's it. You can only get any more stacks from killing enemy players. So, but these stacks are ridiculous. To deal 1.25% of the target's current health every single stack, and it can stack infinitely, means that the more stacks you get, the more and more damage you're going to be doing. It's truly terrifying what this champion can do if she gets going. But if you stop her from getting going, then she's just basically a weak AD carry that has somewhat of an annoying ultimate. And that ultimate really is annoying. This Lamb's Respite, preventing anyone in the area from dying, can be so good in clutch situations for turning teamfights around so dramatically that we're going to have to keep an eye on how well Nocturnal Plex can use that ultimate to really dictate the pace of these fights.
Yeah, and we'll see if he's going to be able to do that in this game. I mean, Nocturnal Plex is pretty well renowned for carrying games. That's not something that he's unfamiliar with. We've seen him do it on Nidalee, we've seen him do it on Rek'Sai. So many different tournaments and on so many different teams. That's one of the things about Plex is there's barely a UK team that he hasn't been on at this stage. He knows everybody in the scene and everybody seems to know him. I'm really intrigued to see how well he's going to be able to do on this Kindred. But we've dwelled on the Choke lineup quite a lot now. Let's take a look over at this NUEL composition. Quite a lot of team fighting here, but also quite a lot of hard engage.
Yeah, they're running the ballista combo down in the bottom lane. Always exciting one to watch. I think it's going to be difficult to hook on any of the champions really on Choke's side, but they've also, as you said, got a great team fight composition. You know, in the mid game around these dragon fights, they're looking to get this wombo combo off. The thing that concerns me for them is that it's kind of tough. I mean, they're mainly relying on pick, because when you think of Gragas, sure, like he can body slam in, he can throw his casket out, and he can set up for these engages, but generally you're only looking to try and catch one person out of position. You know, you're not trying to throw the entire team into you. That's not really how Gragas works. So they're kind of running a pick composition in the style of how everything comes together, but they have no like solid hard engage like Choke do. They have no way really to kick off a big wombo combo team fight, which, you know, when you're running a Kalista, when you're running an Orianna, that's kind of what you want. You want them all to group up together. You want them all sitting in the same spot so that you can, you know, kill them all at once, basically. So this Gragas, I'm hoping that these guys, you know, have developed enough synergy to be able to make sure that they can work together, because many, many times I've seen a perfect shockwave ready to come out, and then a Gragas barrel has completely ruined it by throwing everyone away from it. So it's a bit of a risky composition to run, but, you know, I have faith in the NUEL. These guys, they're looking to prove themselves. You know, these guys are obviously the underdogs here. They want a brand new lineup for the NUEL, and they want to demonstrate that the NUEL has potential. There is new talent in the UK, and that they can compete with these top 4 UK teams.
Yeah, absolutely. This is one thing that I was about to touch on the end of this. This is the NUEL's this is the kind of new lineups debut here. The NUEL are looking to prove themselves. They've had a shaky first half to the split. We're beginning the second half now, and we'll see if they can actually get something on the board here and prove that they aren't a team that's just going to get demoted once again. We'll see if they're going to be able to make it to playoffs. But at this point, we're getting to the stage in the tournament where these lower teams cannot afford to lose any more points. It's going to be the people that have the 4 wins on the board that make it through into playoffs. And so far, we've got 4 teams that have 3 wins on the board. At this stage, the lower 4 teams have to be getting these wins. They have to be able to put themselves on the board. And we'll see if the NUEL are going to be able to kick this one off right as we're heading, ladies and gentlemen, on to Summoner's Rift. And over on our blue side, we're going to have Choke Gaming. And on our red side, we are going to have the NUEL. And we'll see if they are going to be able to get some points on the board like we were discussing, or whether it's going to be a sorry journey out of the playoffs. But here we go.
You know, I think this should be an exciting one. Obviously, this is a best of 3 series, so even if they fall behind in this game, they can still change their strategy up. They can still do things coming into the second game. But, you know, speaking of trying to prove themselves, I want to bring a note to Jokerism. This guy, formerly of XL Esports, he's been working really hard for a very long time to prove that he can play with the best UK teams. And Choke, for a very long time, has been considered to be one of the top 3 within the UK. So the fact that Jokerism's finally made it onto one of these teams is a big achievement for him as an individual. And now, you know, he has to prove himself. He has to show that I can play at this level. So he's someone we need to keep our eyes on, as well as Raveno. You know, I've already talked about how he's filling in Alchemist shoes. I'm looking forward to see how well he can do. So a lot of new blood on this Choke lineup as well.
Yeah, there certainly is. And a bit of old blood as well, with Numlocked coming back in from the Turkish LCS, bringing Raveno with him. I'll be interested to see how well he does in his glorious return to the UK scene. I mean, Numlocked was a player that, when he was in when he was on Choke Gaming, he used to be kind of, or it felt like he was at least one of the reasons that they were so successful. I'm talking like Epic 13. That was when Choke were really at their peak, and that was because of Numlock's leadership, I feel. And he essentially never lost lane. He always seemed to be in the right place, and he always seemed to bring his team to victory. We'll see if he's still got that, whether the Turkish LCS has affected him positively or negatively here.
Well, I mean, he's he is basically like one of the top UK carries, you know. He's that guy that will win his lane, will run away with the game, you know. Just looking at some of his top champions, 3.6 KDA on Aurelia, 3.7 KDA on Gnar, 3.6 KDA on Hecarim. You know, he is the guy that wins his lane, and he doesn't just win it, he destroys it. He gets so far ahead that it becomes impossible for the enemy team to deal with. But, you know, this game he is providing a bit more utility. He wants to try and help his team out a little bit more, not really go for those sort of aggressive play styles. But that doesn't mean Malphite can't be aggressive. So I'm looking forward to seeing. It's great to have Numlock back. You know, we missed him here in the UK. So I'm looking forward to seeing him play once again.
Yeah, for sure, and we'll see how successful he's going to be. Both junglers and top laners starting off with that duo jungle setup just to make sure they have that safe start. And we already see Choke starting to push the NUEL underneath their tower in this bottom lane, and that's one of the things that Tristana as a laner is renowned for doing, is just shoving that lane under, and we'll see how well Drulz is going to be able to do at last hitting underneath the tower as Kalista. One of the champions that's sort of better at last hitting under tower. With that rend, you're relatively easily able to pick up a lot of those CS, but so far, Jokerism already picking up a 5 CS lead, and let's remember that Jokerism, this is his first official game with the Choke Gaming lineup, moving over from XL. We'll see how well he's going to be able to do in his debut as well. A lot of debuts in this game.
Yeah, you know, it's been a long time since we've had a last ESL UK Premiership game. You know, it's really exciting to be back. I'm looking forward to seeing how well all these players perform. And, oh, Mazrim stealing away the wagon from Drulz there. That wasn't very nice of you. But I saw he was trying to land the hook onto Jokerism, and this is one of the things that the Choke's bottom lane needs to be careful of, because when you're shoving so close under the tower, if you do get hooked up, there is a possibility to take that tower aggro, to take a huge chunk of damage that you're not quite prepared for. So Jokerism and Hado doing a good job of positioning around their minions so that they can't quite as easily get hooked up. Right now, though, it does look like Nocturnal Plex might be looking for a gank in the mid.
He certainly is, and that's going to be the Dance of Arrows used to jump closer, but not really going to be able to connect anything. And this is one thing that I've seen a lot with Kindred so far. It just, oh, the hook actually lands from Mazrim in the bottom lane. Hado taking a lot of damage. The rend is stacking up. His grey health is ticking away. He has no shield, but the damage just isn't there from Drulz. Rend really not doing a whole lot.
That was a little bit underwhelming.
I know, that was anticlimactic.
Like 6 stacks of rend on him, and I'm like, oh, Hado's in trouble, Hado's in trouble. And then, no, this is the natural tankness that a Tahm Kench provides. You know, it's so difficult to deal with him, and this is one of the main reasons why he's been so highly banned and highly contested in the world stage, because of how useful he is. Right now, though, Victoria could be in some trouble.
He certainly could. Plex enters the fray, dancing around with that dance of arrows. The slow is going to go through, as well as the percentage help. Victorio is going to go down for first blood. In the meantime, the bottom lane, we did see Shaven Tortoise enter the lane, but they're not quite going to be able to do all too much. Drulz actually coming off worse in that trade, and it's going to be a 1-0 trade in favour of Choke. Fantastic start for them.
Yeah, so this is the problem that Victorio had right there. He just overextended the lane. He felt he was safe because he had that pink ward in his Tri-Brush, but Nocturnal Plex didn't need to go through there. You know, he just came straight up through the river, and the problem is that when... Oh, just keeping an eye on Ravno, he could be in a bit of trouble here, but the problem for a Malphite is kind of a hard lane to gank for. You know, he doesn't really offer that much utility, he doesn't really do very much, but when you're so overextended in the lane, it doesn't matter, because Nocturnal Plex does enough damage combined with Malphite to be able to bring him down. So with his flash unavailable and his TP down, he's probably going to lose quite a lot of experience and gold off the back of that. So he now is going to be definitely on the back foot. He's going to have to play hyper passive in this lane, and not a great start for the NUEL, but you know, it's only a bit of a bad start. Plenty of room to come back into this.
Yeah, well, this is a very important game. Perhaps NUEL already starting to feel the pressure here. They have to start to try and get some points down for themselves, and it's not the best way to start the game. You mentioned earlier that Choke Gaming's lineup isn't that strong in the early game. They're looking towards the late game, and so far the early game's been going fantastically for them. 1-0 on the board, a 900 gold lead already. I'm interested to see what they're going to be able to do with this early lead.
And look at this. The mark comes down onto draws. Now, the psychological effect that has on draws is, okay, where is Nocturnal Plex now? Is he looking to gank the bottom lane? Is he just trying to psych me out? These are all these things that draws has to take into consideration, and Shaven Tortoise is going to have to play around that. Nocturnal Plex does appear to be hanging around the bottom half of the map, but it's going to be so difficult to gank when they're playing that defensively, and Chokerism wants to go back and get his BF. So, looks like a bit of a mind game coming out from Nocturnal so far in the early game, but still definitely Choke in the driving seat for the first 7 minutes of this game.
Yeah, for sure. Ravano did try and get a roam up to that top lane there, but not going to be successful in that one. Is going to clear away that pink ward though, so potentially opens that gank up later on for Nocturnal Plex or for himself on the R8. And Nocturnal Plex able to just go towards the mid lane, soak up that XP so they don't really lose all too much for going for that roam either. So relatively decent for Choke. And now that that ward's gone, we already see Plex heading up, but again, another ward blocking his way in the river this time. Shaven Tortoise was there ready for the counter gank regardless.
So after he picks up the Scuttle Crab, he's going to be on 3 stacks. That means that he's going to be doing 3.75% of the target's, I think it's max HP. Yeah, it's the... Oh, it's their current health, sorry. So it's their current health. That's quite a lot of damage this early on in the game. 3.5% of their current health per auto attack. And the thing is, it really is interesting how it works, because it's just so much damage. Like,
yeah,
a champion shouldn't be allowed this much damage this early on. It's crazy. And the fact that Nocturnal Plex playing his aggressive nature, going into the enemy jungle, not afraid to get those extra marks, just shows his confidence and familiarity with the champion.
Yeah, and that's one thing as well about Nocturnal Plex, is no matter what, he always plays confidently. I've never seen him nervous going into a game or playing nervously. He always is confident to go for the counter jungle. And I mean, that's another thing about Plex, is he is always going for counter jungling. Whenever you watch him in that jungle, he will happily walk into the opponent's jungle and take them on in a duel, even if he doesn't know where they are. It never feels like he's afraid to go and check for them.
And Kindred is a surprisingly strong duelist. You know, the Dance of Arrows gives you quite a lot of mobility, as well as that you have a very nice slow. And if you get into serious trouble, you have Lamb's Respite to keep you nice and healthy. So it's definitely a decent duelist. It's quite comfortable walking into the enemy jungle, assuming that you have support. You know, you can get collapsed upon. You are relatively squishy as an AD carry in the jungle, so he does need to be aware of that. And I feel as though in the past we have seen him be a little bit over-aggressive. But right now it does look like that Choke is setting up a dive in the bottom lane, in the top lane, sorry.
Yeah, Victorio is well aware of the situation. Trying to back away. Actually walks back under his tower. This could have been a mistake, but Shaven Tortoise is here. Numlocked is going to get knocked away from the tower, though, and he uses his ultimate to pull away to safety. And that is going to be nobody going down. Oriana arrives on the scene. Rayon Mort trying to get in there, but he's not going to be able to find any targets. It's just going to be 0 for 0 after that.
That was actually very well played coming out from Victoria to throw that silence down just as Numlocked is looking to make the aggressive play. Right now, though, Rainwalk could be caught out.
He certainly could. He's having to flash over the wall, but Plex is more than happy to flash after him. Tortoise now lands the knock-up, but it's not going to be enough. The Ignite is down, and his Tortoise is certainly going to be shaven here as Plex picks up the double kill. Now Victorio just desperately trying to get back underneath his tower, and I do expect him to pull away to safety, but that is a fantastic start for Plex. 2-0-1 already on that Kindred. He's finished his Warrior enchant. He is feeling rich.
That was... Ooh, Haddo does get hooked on the tower.
Yeah, Haddo could be in trouble here. The tower is going to go down, which might be the green light for go for them to trade on back. But Choke Gaming decide they don't want to go for this one. Haddo is going to survive those Ren stacks once again. And it's just going to be a tower for nothing, as well as the 2 kills in the top lane. Choke Gaming snowball their lead to 3,000 gold.
This is a great early start coming out from Choke right now. Nocturnal Plex picks himself up another stack as well, so he's going to extend his snowball even further. And, you know, the fact that Jokerism and Haddo are applying so much pressure in this bottom lane, allowing them to get a tower so early on in the game, is going to just put so much pressure down onto the NUEL right now, because they can just rotate Jokerism around. They can now put him in the middle lane. They can put Raveno in a solo lane, try and get some as much farm as possible onto him. Right now, though, speaking of Raveno...
Yeah, Mazrim actually getting chunked down as he enters the mid lane. A nice silence, though. Shockwave should come through here. Actually, it doesn't, and Hado comes to his safety! Gobbles him up, and Raveno is going to be able to walk away unscathed. He is going to be forced back to base, but that is a small price to pay when they go for a 3-man gank.
Oh, that was so unfortunate.
Oh, right there. Beautiful flash.
I don't believe the Shockwave was actually off cooldown at that point, and I kept an eye on Raveno's ultimate. I was like, does it have it available? Does he have it available? Does he have it available? And it just came up at the last second. He's able to dash into the warm embrace of Hado, and he takes him to safety. What a great play coming out from Hado. And they're actually, because they invested so many resources into the middle lane, this is what I was talking about. They can just rotate Jokerism around, and he can set for sieges. He goes and takes away the top tower, extending their gold lead even further. And now what I expect them to do is put Jokerism in the middle lane, put Raveno in the bottom lane, and then they're going to take themselves a third tower and maybe look for a Drake play. This is very nice rotational macro play coming out from Choke so far. This
is maybe an opportunity for the NUEL, though. Raveno has no Spirit Rush available, and Shaven, Tortoise, and Mazrim have arrived. The Charm is going to land on the Gragas, and that is just going to deter the gank entirely. Really not the way that the NUEL wanted that to go, and once again, Raveno just going to slip away from a gank.
Yeah, I think he realized this time I should probably play a little bit more passively. I need to be a little bit more careful when I don't have my Spirit Rush and when I don't have my ult, but Draws could now end up losing his life.
Yeah, I would expect him to go down here. He's going to flash over the wall, but Plex can just jump straight on after him, dancing over that wall with the Dance of Arrows, and now the Dragon is wide open for Choke Gaming. 4-0, 2 towers to 0, and almost 4,500 gold in the lead. Choke Gaming showing us the definition of a snowball right here.
I really like that Abyssal Voyage coming out from Hado. The fact that he used it to just set up the flank onto Draws, completely cut off his route of escape, which basically forced him into where Plex was, basically guaranteed them a kill, and it also forced all of the summoners out from Draws. I really like that play coming out from them. Numlock right there. Bit of BM as the rest of Choke look to siege down onto this middle lane. But it's going to be harder to siege onto this middle lane now, though. And also, if NUEL play this smart, they can potentially try and set up some freezes, you know, in their side lanes, try and get as much farm onto their carries as possible. But it's going to be a matter now of how Choke decide to play. You know, they've taken a lot of towers in this early game, and I imagine that the NUEL is going to play quite passively. So it's going to be tough, and it's going to be interesting to see how Choke actually look to close out this game, considering how much of a lead they have this early on.
Yeah, I think the key thing here is going to be how NUEL try and counter whatever Choke's next move is. If Choke opt to play for the sort of pick style, the sort of skirmish style that they have been going for so far this game, we'll have to see what the NUEL are going to be able to do about that one. They do have a Blitzcrank on their side, so there's certainly opportunity to be able to catch someone out, but it's going to be about vision control, whether they can find anyone that is out of position that they can go for that hook on.
And speaking of vision control, have a look around the map at all these wards coming out from Choke right now. You can see littered all around the top half of the river, as well as the bottom half of the river. And, you know, I think that would be an excellent Hado gets hooked up.
Yeah, so speaking of landing the hook, Hado is in trouble. The Shockwave lands onto 2. Hado knocks straight back into the lineup, but Rayonmont is in a lot of trouble. That's going to be the ultimate from Kindred, and it's going to keep Hado alive momentarily. He now falls, though, along with Plex, and this is fantastic for the NUEL. They're finally getting a couple of kills onto that scoreboard. 2-for-1 trade, and now they can look towards the mid lane.
That was a great hook from Mazrim, but he actually landed onto one of the tankiest members of Choke, and because of that, it actually bought plenty of time for the rest of Choke to come down, and it was looking like a great fight for Choke because Rayonmont was brought down incredibly low very early on into the fight, but the fact that the teleport came out from Victorio is what really changed the fight in the NUEL's favor. No, you know, counter teleport came out from Numlock. There was really nothing for him to teleport to, and as a result of that, the NUEL had the numbers advantage, and they were able to pick up a 2-for-1 in that exchange. So while it was a victory, it was still only a small one. So hopefully now they can keep looking for these picks, and they can keep looking for these small advantages to make their way back into the game.
Speaking of small advantages, it is going to be Choke stealing away that red buff, actually giving it over to Ravano, who gets grabbed up by Mazrim, doing a fantastic job on this Blitzcrank. Do they have the damage to finish him off? It's going to be the knockup from Numlock, but not enough to save their mid laner. It's going to be a 1-for-0. Nice pickup for the NUEL, and it's going to deny any push opportunity, and it's also going to swap over that double buff to Rayon Mort.
That was beautiful from Rayon Mort. He deserves a BAFTA for that performance right there, because he was hanging around the tower. He was like saying, oh no, I'm a helpless Orianna, whatever will I do? And then Ravanu decides to capitalize on this. He sees him completely out of position, and then Mazrim sitting there on the back line waiting to hook him up, and they pick up that nice kill. It was actually the Raptors that helped them out there, being able to get that last tick down onto Ravano and transferring that double buff over to Rayon Mort. Fantastically well played, and you know, while he doesn't get a Raptor, while he doesn't get the BAFTA, I think he's going to be pretty happy with those double buffs.
Yeah, definitely will be. The blue buff especially going to be phenomenal on Orianna. And then as well, while laning, Orianna does tend to use a whole lot of those auto attacks. But not going to be able to use them to too much effect just yet, as they're going to be forced away from this middle tower once again. One issue that the NUEL have been having so far this game is they've just not been able to get a foothold in grabbing any of these objectives.
No, they really haven't. You know, you can see that even though they've been able to get these picks, it just feels like the pressure's still in Choke's favor, you know? You can just see it across the map. The way that they're managing their waves, always having the lanes push in their favor, makes it very difficult. It means that the NUEL are always playing on the back foot. Right now, though...
Oh, the Choke Gaming lineup has been caught out here. Mazrim looking for a grab, but it's not quite gonna find its target. That is going to mean that Choke can get away from that one. It was a good chunk of damage, but no ultimate's going to be used from either side of this game.
That's actually very impressive how the NUEL responded to that, because looking at the map, I'm not convinced they actually had very much vision of that. Those two red wards that you can see weren't there initially.
No.
You know, that was a blind bush, and Victorio threw out his Rupture, manages to find them. Unfortunately, the rest of the NUEL aren't quite able to capitalize. Maybe it was just a blind Rupture.
I think...
And just coincidentally, they were like, oh, hi, Choke.
I believe
so, nice play coming
it
out
might have been that Tribrush ward that they walked past, potentially. I'm not 100% sure. But fantastic play regardless. Plex going to be able to steal away that blue buff. It was a little bit sketchy for him there. The smite didn't quite finish it off. It was down to 43 HP, but the auto attack went on through and took that buff away in the end. That is going to mean...
Nocturnal Plex is sitting at 6 stacks now. So he's got 7.5% of the enemy's current health per auto attack. But it does mean that the enemy jungle aren't going to be targeted by Wolf anymore. So he's only going to get any more stacks by getting kills on marked targets. So right now he's pretty much hit a pretty massive power spike. You know, with the Blade of the Ruin King completed, with that Warrior enchantment, as well as 6 stacks. He's going to be doing a huge amount of damage. Trying to duel this guy is something that you do not want to do. So keep an eye out on Plex, because he is the guy that's going to be doing a lot of damage.
Yeah, and I mean, we were saying before the game that he loves to carry. He might just have to as Hado gets caught out, but Mazrim taking a huge amount of damage from the Tristana. Fate Skull is going to deny the explosion, though. And now the Dragon is going to be kicked off here by Nocturnal Plex, Ravano, and Numlocked. They're going to be able to take away that objective with no response from the NUEL, who look like they might actually want to fight this one. 5,000 gold down, though. I'm not sure how wise that is.
Yeah, the teleport was used from Rayon Mort, and I think it was, you know, it was smart for the NUEL to try and contest it. It's a great opportunity for their team composition to work, you know, around these dragons, around this mid-game point. They have a couple of decent items, so looking for a fight now may have worked in their favor, but because Mazrim was forced to flash out, the explosive cask was used from Shaven Tortoise very early on. It meant that they couldn't really look for those fights because those major abilities were down. So a little bit unfortunate for the NUEL to get caught out before they could actually position for the dragon. But hopefully coming up for this third dragon, they can position themselves a little bit better, and they can look to prep for that dragon a little bit earlier on.
Yeah, and that's it. It's all about the preparation. It's all about being there before the dragon actually spawns so that you can set up. But actually, Baron getting kicked off here by Plex and Numlocked. It has been warded out though. Actually, they're just going to go for Lamb's Respite here. That's going to keep Numlocked alive. The Baron is getting incredibly low. It's going to be smited away, and it's going to be Plexus. But there's a Shockwave onto 4. That's going to be ultimates everywhere. Double kill comes through for Raymond, and that is going to be absolute chaos. The rocket grab comes out from Mazrim in the end, and that is going to end the team fight 2 for 4 in favour of the NUEL. Just one member having Baron here, but in the meantime, he's using that Baron to push an inhibitor.
So, right here, something that I completely forgot to mention is Kindred's ability to take Baron. Because she has 6 stacks, because she does so much current health damage, it can take those Barons very, very quickly. They use Numlock to try and tank the Baron up, and, you know, they got it so incredibly low without the NUEL noticing, but because they decided to commit onto the Baron rather than disengage, that gave enough time for Rainmort to flash over, get a beautiful 4-man Shockwave off onto... It was so good. I really love that play from Rainmort. Didn't hesitate at all, just flashed straight over the wall, throws the Shockwave down, gets 4 members, and they actually end up getting 4 kills off the back of that. So they've completely closed the kill gap, but unfortunately they haven't quite closed that goal gap. So with a 6,000 goal difference between the two teams, I still think that it is Choke that came out ahead in that situation.
Yeah. I feel like the gold gap here is a perfect example of sort of why our top 4 teams are the top 4. They're able to squeeze that extra little bit of CS out. They're able to squeeze those extra objectives out, and it gives them this consistent gold lead. Even when they're even in kills, there's still 4 towers up, there's still 2 dragons up, and a whole load of CS up in multiple lanes. The only lane that's actually winning right now for the NUEL is going to be that top lane in CS, but again, down in kills. And realistically, a Malphite doesn't need to win lane.
Yeah, he's pretty much useful as long as he has his ultimate.
Yeah.
That is what Malphite is. I'm sorry to any of you Malphite mains out there, but he's pretty much just an ultimate. That is his role. No matter how far behind he falls, he will always be relevant at any stage in the game, as long as he can land a good unstoppable force. So right now it does look like Plex looking to be a little bit aggressive on this. Look at the damage. It's crazy.
Yeah, and this is the laner that we were talking about being ahead here. Plex is able to just chunk him down, and while he distracts everyone, the rest of Choke barrels up the mid lane. Jokerism taking a good chunk there from Ray and Mort, but it's not really going to be enough to deter this, or is it, as Numlock gets hooked up? But Numlock's really not the target they want to be going on here. That gobbles him up over the wall, pulls him to safety. And look at this. I mean, they've caught out the Haddo, but he's really not the best target. Numlock goes in with a 3-man knock-up, draws, having to flash to the back line here. Shockwave only lands onto Jokerism, who jumps to safety as Ravano is diving in. He picks up 1 kill for himself, but he's all out of Spirit Rushes, but Flash is going to have to do for him as he picks himself up the double kill. And now Victorio is in all kinds of trouble. He's going to go down along with this mid lane inhibitor tower, and soon to be a mid lane inhibitor. They could potentially look to end, or they might just go for the safe play and take the bottom inhibitor instead.
That was also a 4 versus 4. You know, Nocturnal, Plex, and Victoria really weren't involved in that fight at all, and it was all set up by initially. It looked like Haddo had been caught out. You know, it looked like, well, he's done. There's nothing that the rest of Choke can do. He's caught out of position. These things happen. He did manage to keep Numlock alive, but there's nothing you can do because he's so innately tanky. It takes the NUEL a while to even get him low, and then all of a sudden Choke decide, hang on a minute, let's turn this around. Numlock throws out the ultimate, gets 3 targets all in one, forces them to flash away as quickly as possible, but it's not enough. Ravano uses the Spirit Rush to catch up to those targets, manages to bring them down, and off the back of that, the Choke pick up 2 inhibitors. And now that the base is cracked for the NUEL, it's going to be very difficult for them to be able to try and keep that 3rd inhibitor alive.
Certainly is, and luckily for the NUEL, the Baron buff has now run out, so at least they are going to be able to clear those waves, especially with an Orianna. Wave clear won't be too much of an issue for them. The issue is going to be when they have to wave clear with Choke Gaming's lineup all up in their face as well. And now all of this vision going to be completely denied in the top half of the jungle. Just 20 seconds until the next dragon spawns, but I really don't think that dragon is an objective Choke are all too worried about right now with 2 inhibitors already down.
Yeah, it's not something that they really need to concern themselves with. They can just look to set up the siege, allow Ravano on those side lanes to keep the waves shoved up so that somebody always has to be drawn to clear those waves out. And it's this pretty much just a slow bleed out now for Choke. And, you know, we talked about how these guys, brand new roster, looking to show that, I mean, having chatted with their coach, he feels as though that this lineup fixes a lot of the problems that they had before. Numlock being a bigger threat in the top lane, you know, Ravano being a lot more aggressive in the middle lane, and you can really see those differences as it does look like Choke are trying to close out this game.
Yeah, they certainly are, and they're pushing on towards this top lane inhibitor tower. Right now, all they need to do is just wait for the supers to pressure in other lanes, and then they get their opportunity when someone goes to clear. Victorio does have that teleport available, so he's going to be able to be in those other lanes, but Draws is getting obliterated by Numlocked. Raveno's Spirit rushes over the wall to finish off that AD carry, dodges away from Mazrim's hook, and that is going to blow this top lane wide open. And speaking of blowing it open, Jokerism is going to obliterate that tower. And this is looking like it might just be game. Numlock with the TSM logo. And that's going to be Lamb's Respite. It's going to keep Nocturnal Plex alive despite being hooked on in. It's going to be a kill onto Mazrim as well. Shockwave only lands onto the Tahm Kench, and he is not going to be benched this game. And now everybody just falling apart for the National University Esports League. And it's going to be, by the looks of things, Choke Gaming looking to finish this one out. The first tower has gone down. They're looking towards the second one as well, as Numlock just tries to zone everybody away. Draws once again just getting bullied by Numlock's Malphite here. The last tower about to fall as Numlock is going to fall himself. That mountain has been crumbling to the floor, but it is going to be the Nexus about to go down. Draws falls, and it is going to be the first game of the day and of the series going over to Choke Gaming.
The new lineup from Choke really going leaps and bounds above expectations. What an incredibly dominant performance coming out from them in this first game of this best of 3 series. I was a little bit skeptical about how they would perform, you know, what is their synergy going to be like, how are they going to operate, but all of those worries were completely brushed aside with that incredibly dominant performance from them. I feel as though this was largely the Nocturnal Plex show, you know, his early aggression, his setting up for picks, his early ganks that he was able to get off really working in his favor, and the fact that Shaven Tortoise just wasn't able to get the same sort of pressure really dictated the difference between these two teams. Hopefully, coming into the next game, NUEL change up their strategy a little bit. What I kind of want to see from them is maybe a little bit more aggressive jungle pathing. I want to see Shaven Tortoise helping his laners out, because pretty much all the time we saw Choke's bottom lane constantly shoving in. We saw Ravano constantly shoving in, and it just felt like that Shaven Tortoise just couldn't get involved. You know, there was just... I just think he needs to come out of his shell just a little bit. He needs to be a little bit more aggressive in this game.
We'll see if he's going to be able to change that one up for their next game. We are going to head into a short break while the players get back into the lobby and prepare themselves for the second game. It is 1-0 to Choke Gaming. The National University Esports League are looking to try and get themselves a win on the board finally. We'll see if they're going to be able to do it after this short break. Don't go anywhere.